life. This mighty prophet of God is tired, worn out, and discouraged. He had been a faithful prophet and had done great things for God, and like anyone who worked hard, the expectation was to see positive results. Elijah expected a great revival of repentance from the people of Israel. And when this didn't happen, and when his life was threatened to be killed by Queen Jezebel, he felt as though he had failed. He had failed himself and he had failed God. And so here we see in his desperation, he runs away from his ministry, he runs away from his problems, and he runs away from his people. Even Elijah, the great prophet of God, lost his confidence, became exhausted, ran away, and even asked God to take his life. Today we'd say, whoa, he's in a really bad place. Have you ever been in a bad place like that? Have you ever found yourself wanting to flee your responsibilities and find rest? So let's look today at how God, as Elijah's father, deals with Elijah's bad place and helps him in his humanity of being tired, worn out, and discouraged. After Elijah's display of self-pity, you would think God would let him off the hook as a prophet. After all, he had done so many great things. Perhaps God should write him out and choose someone else to carry on. Let Elijah wallow and quit. But thankfully, God doesn't do that. Instead, in this great Old Testament story, we see God's recipe for Elijah's restoration. And the steps God took involved rest, refreshment, and the revelation of God's presence with him. The first step God took when dealing with Elijah involved rest. God knew the prophet had expended all of his physical, emotional, and spiritual energy, and he was worn out. What Elijah needed was a break. And God knew that the first thing he needed was a time of rest. He got nap time. Okay? Now this is just a reminder that God never intended for our bodies to run like we force them to. We should never be guilty of laziness, but we should also get the rest that our bodies need. When we are rested, we will accomplish much more for God than we will if we are exhausted, whether that's physically, emotionally, or spiritually. When we are rested, we can deal with life's situations so much better. And when we are rested, life is good. We were not made to work 24/7, but rather to embrace Sabbath rest. God rested on the seventh day, and even the Lord Jesus took time to rest and directed his disciples to do this as well. In Mark 6:31, we read, Jesus said, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest for a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. In verses 5 through 8 of the 1 Kings text in the Old Testament, we read of God's use of refreshment through the fueling of the body. God meets Elijah's human hunger needs. God meets this need for the purpose to strengthen his servant. Twice we're told that an angel appeared to the prophet, woke him up from his sleep, and supplied him with food right there in the wilderness. Now before this story, there's a story where the widow fed Elijah from the last of the ingredients that she had in the house. Do you remember that story? It's just before this in 1 Kings. Because she had given the last of what she had to God's prophet, her ingredients never ran out. It's a good miracle story. She was given perpetual ingredients by God. And now here in the desert, the prophet would eat directly from the hand of God through an angel sent to minister to his needs. What grace. Think about it. Here's a man who has run out on God, yet God hasn't run out on him. Isn't that just be. A father that comes to rescue and restore, not judge or condemn. Elijah needed to be rested and refreshed, so God allowed him to rest and then fed him, meeting his basic human needs. When we are in a time of discouragement, depression, or doubt, we find that the Lord knows just how to meet our needs. Often, God will deal with the symptom before dealing with the problem. In my life, I found that to be so that I am rested in order to be able to listen. If the Lord had tried to reason with Elijah while he was exhausted, hungry, and discouraged, nothing would have been accomplished. Remember, he asked God to die. He had had enough of this life, and he was scared. If God had simply said, "No, your work is not done yet," Elijah may have walked away from God altogether and turned his back on God and been angry in his exhaustion. If God had not extended grace to Elijah, how would Elijah have known God's deep, abiding love and care for him as his prophet? We see God's presence, God's provisions, and God's patience in this story. Even though Elijah had run away, literally running away to the desert, still God seeks after him to care for him and to meet his needs. How many times has God done the same thing for you and for me? We run away from God, and yet God remains faithful, ever present, and continues to allow blessings and grace to fall upon us, reminding us that God loves us. Why does God do this? Do you ever think about that? Why does God continue to shower us with love and grace when we're off doing our own thing? Well, this is the way of God. This is the way of love. This is the way of grace. This is the way Jesus tried to teach us to love and care for one another with unconditional love. Grace is undeserved. It's a gift given to us, not earned. We see God being patient by allowing Elijah to wander and to run for a time. God doesn't write Elijah off as a lost cause because God still has plans for the prophet. In verses 7 to 8, the angel tells him, "Get up and eat. Otherwise the journey will be too much for you." Do you think Elijah caught that sentence? A journey? This is not the end. Did God not hear me? I asked him to die. God's not going to take my life? Even in the caring of Elijah, we see God's prevenient grace building up Elijah for the journey. God will reveal himself to Elijah, but not here in the desert. It'll be after a 40-day journey to Mount Horeb. So what does God say to him when God does speak to him? "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Have you ever heard God ask you that question? Have you ever had that small voice inside your head ask, "What on earth are you doing?" Or "What were you thinking?" Right? I've heard that a time or two. When I've been distracted from what God has called me to do, I call this God's wake-up call. Right? I can get pretty far away from God's plan just with my own good intentions, and then wham, I hear God say, "What are you doing?" It's so easy to let our relationship with God lapse and allow ourselves to go off on our own with our own good intentions. God will surely allow you to use your free will to make your own choices. But eventually, you may hear your Father's voice questioning you, saying, "What are you doing here?" This is God's loving way of getting our attention and offering us the chance to choose to return to God. If God your Father were to speak to you today about where you are in your life, would God ask you that same question? In his questioning, would you recognize God's role as your loving parent, calling you back to what's most important in your life, in your family, and in your relationships, and even in your ministry of love to one another. Now that the Lord has Elijah's attention, he commands the prophet to stand before God. He has had a time to rest, he's had a time to eat, a time to sleep, and a time to go off to a deserted place. And now it's time for God to reveal himself to his prophet and renew his calling to Elijah, to offer to his prophet once again the opportunity for obedience and surrender, to the place where nothing is greater than God. You see, Elijah had let the world, Jezebel and the sins of the people, overshadow his mission and ministry. He allowed evil of the world to suck out the life from him, to suck out the joy of serving God. And God calls him back to the place where nothing else but God matters. And if we take time to read Elijah's stories through his ministry, it's easy for us to look at this part of the story and wonder why Elijah was scared. God had been so present in his ministry, and God had revealed himself through powerful experiences, like the story of the bull. I don't know if you remember that. It's earlier in the book of 1 Kings. Remember where Elijah was revealing that God was the one true God versus the god of Baal, and they cut the bull in half. Does anybody know that story? Okay, so I'm not going to tell it. All right, so because I know you're not going to go home and find it. So God, what happens is God tells him to cut a bull in half and let the steer fall open. So one half is on this side and one half is on this side. And then the people of Baal pray to their God to rain fire down and consume the bull, and nothing happens. And then Elijah prays to God, Jehovah God, and fire comes down from heaven and it is consumed. Okay? It's a miracle story. The Old Testament miracle stories we're not always as up on or as familiar with. But that's the ministry of Elijah. That happened to Elijah. So it's kind of hard for us to realize Elijah being discouraged or tired and worn out when he had seen such powerful acts of God. But the problem is that Elijah is exhausted, and fear has encouraged him to be discouraged. When we're discouraged, we're prevented from seeing things clearly. We doubt ourselves, and we can doubt our faith. Our minds become clouded, and our thoughts can run wild. Exhaustion feeds discouragement. Rest and nutrition can help. That's what Father God provided to Elijah. Elijah needed his God to be a loving father, to lift him up, to pick him up, and to restore and empower him once again. And God chose to provide for his needs, to remind him of what was most important, and to give Elijah the chance, while resting, to recall the events of his life and ministry and be reminded of the good work that had already been accomplished in the name of God. Elijah needed to be reminded that God was there and that he was not alone. Isn't that the role of the Father? To be there, to pick up and encourage, to be the backbone of love and support, to remind us that love wins, that grace abounds, and that forgiveness is possible. The problem is, in life, our problems get too big. Whether they are spiritual, material, or emotional, the real root of the problem is that it puts us over the edge, and something has become larger in our eyes than God's love, God's power, and God's grace. And so, in our scripture from Kings, next comes the best part, the part we're the most familiar with, when Elijah stands in the cave on Mount Horeb and the Lord passes by. First, there's a great strong wind, right? Then an earthquake, and then after that, a great fire. But we're told the Lord wasn't in any of these. After that, there's a small, still voice. And what the earthquake and the fire and the wind could not do, that small, still voice could do. Why? Well, for someone else, it might have been the earthquake that was needed. Or for somebody else, it might have been the fire or the wind. But because it was Elijah, what Elijah needed was God's still, small voice. And God knew that's what Elijah needed. For this is how God touched Elijah's heart. This was personal. This was a moment between God and Elijah. And at that moment, Elijah had already seen the wonders of God in the big ways. Elijah needed to know that God could be found in the small, still ways of God. That God's love is in all of it, in the power and in the silence. The power of God is in the Word of God and in the works of God in the hearts of men. God responds and reveals himself in the way that is needed for the personal interaction within each of us. And we forget that God doesn't always move in big, visible, outward manifestations. Often the greatest works of God are done in the quiet, in the secret places of the heart. A father's job is in the growing of young men and women into adulthood with wisdom and with love and with grace. Well, God is in the business of growing men and women into the image of his Son, Jesus. And we would do well to copy God's recipe for restoration when dealing with our own children and our own families. God used renewal through rest. He used refreshment through a meal, and patience in revealing himself and his love and grace. We're not left to flounder on our own, but we are sought after by a Father who loves us enough to restore us to wholeness. A Father proud to call us children. A Father who offers us his Son, Jesus, to forgive us, to empower us, and to walk side by side with us through this life, and to welcome us home. And as we live for God and trust in our Heavenly Father, we can accept the love and the grace and the blessings that will be showered upon us through our Heavenly Father. Thanks be to God. Amen. One of my favorite